testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer unto God under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask if you pull that microphone a little closer to you, and it is important that you speak into the microphone so that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury can hear you. Yeah, you can raise this sheriff as high as it can go. Okay. Okay. It's also important that when responding to questions that you do so verbally. It's kind of difficult to understand.
Yes, sir.
All right. So for the record, if you please state your name, spelling your last.
Benjamin Branford, last name B as in boy, Roger, Adam, Nora, Foxtrot, Ocean, Roger, David.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
Officer Branford, where are you employed?
With the Columbus Division of Police.
And how long have you been employed there?
Going on 12 years, sir.
Okay. And what duty and capacity are you employed?
I'm a patrol officer.
All right. Where's your, do you have a specific precinct or jurisdiction that you're a patrol officer?
Yes, sir. 3 precinct. Mostly the Clintonville area.
Have you been employed as a patrol officer that entire time in that 3 precinct?
Yes, sir.
And prior to going and becoming a patrol officer for the Columbus Division of Police, did you have any other law enforcement job?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you have any prior military experience?
Yes, sir.
Where?
I was with the United States Army, both active and reserve.
So tell us the type of things that you do as a patrol officer on 3 precinct.
As patrol officer, I'm responsible for patrolling my cruiser district, the precinct when available, and taking dispatch runs as they're dispatched, or I can conduct pickup runs as I see incidents unfold.
Okay. And how do you respond to being called out to a run?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Do you respond with that microphone that's on your chest? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you also have a computer in your cruiser?
We do.
Do you have a specific partner or anyone that you work with?
From time to time, I work with a partner, but no, it's just based on who's there at the time.
Okay. And what time of day do you work?
I work evenings, 3rd shift from 11 p to 7 a.
Were you working that shift on December 21st or 22nd, 2020?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about your activities that night? Do you recall them?
Like all the activities, or
Just
leading up to that?
Yeah, when you came onto work, probably around midnight. What do you recall?
Okay, there was 4 of us that were at work that night on our precinct. We didn't have a sergeant. We did have a covering sergeant. I cannot recall who that was, but there was 4 officers assigned to that precinct that night. We were all in individual cruisers. Just prior to the incident in question, we were called out for either a robbery or robbery in progress at a different location. All 4 of us responded to that run. Took a while to resolve that run, which we all had to go to with lights and sirens. Ultimately ended up being not a robbery or robbery in progress. It was some kind of disturbance between family members. Unauthorized use of motor vehicle, I believe.
Okay.
So once we finished that, we'd all went our separate ways to, I assume, I can't speak for the other officers, but I went up to North High Street to start working on that incident report.
All right. So did you get to North High Street to start working on that incident report?
I did.
All right. And what happened after that, Officer Branford?
Well, while I was working on the incident report, I heard an officer come over the air and state shots fired. I wasn't sure who it was. I thought it was Officer Detweiler. And I looked at my computer to find out where that location was, that officers were involved in an incident. And once I figured out where I needed to get to, I turned on my lights and sirens and proceeded to that location.
Okay. And with that, is that what you're supposed to do?
Yes, sir.
About how long did it take you to get there?
I would guess 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. So was this a lights and sirens call?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this was a high priority run.
Yes, sir.
Can you discuss the priority of runs?
Priorities of runs?
Yes.
Well, there's several priorities, one being the highest level, and I believe 9 being the lowest. You typically, on the computer dispatch system, you're typically sent on runs roughly between 1 and 5. I believe 5, maybe 4 even. I think it's 5, like something we get called too often is like 16C, noise complaint, especially in the college area that I work. There's people that play the radios loud. That's like a level 5. Something higher priority where shots are fired, such as this, would be a 1.
Okay. So this would be the highest level call?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you know whether an officer was shooting or had shot someone or had been shot?
I did not at the time.
So this is a high priority run. You turn on your lights and sirens and you try and get there as quick as possible. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry if I asked you this question before. Do you recall how long it took you to get there?
No, I'd have to look. You can see there's a en route and a arrive button, and assuming that I press those in that kind of a situation, that might annotate it, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. So an arrive button, talk about what that is.
In the cruiser computer system, there's a dispatching system or program that once the dispatcher sends you the run, you're to acknowledge it. In a high priority or a high stress situation like this critical incident, there's been times where I can't speak for other officers, but I may not have pressed the button to show that I'm en route or even that I'm arrived.
Okay, so there's a button that you have located in your cruiser that signifies and provides a signal to where dispatch that you are at a particular location?
Yes, assuming there are some other assumptions with that. Assuming you are, the dispatch knows that you're going. I mean, typically on a run like this, most of the area, precinct and zone, tends to head towards that location because of the priority. So at that point, I did not mark on the air and say, that I recall, I didn't mark on the air and say 33 en route.
Yeah, because your biggest goal was to get there, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, that was your objective, to get there. What about the lower priority runs, like the noise complaints and those sorts of things? Do you hit your arrive button when you arrive for those?
You're supposed to, yes.
So you arrive to Oberlin, and what do you see and what do you do, Officer Branford?
Well, the route that I took, I went southbound on Shattuck Avenue, which intersected into Oberlin Drive. And once I turned west on Oberlin Drive, there was another cruiser that was already there. I believe it was Officer Lisco's cruiser. And I don't recall if I saw her get in her trunk, getting out of the vehicle, or what she was doing. I thought she was getting scene tape. I can't recall, though. That might have been knowledge after the fact. Then the next, I parked my vehicle. Not sure if I was on the north or south side of the street. But when I exited, started going westbound towards the incident, then I next came in contact with Officer McPherson, who was also putting up scene tape. I can't recall verbatim what I asked him or what I said. Probably something similar to what needs to be done or where's the scene. And I can't recall if he gestured or what exactly he had said. But I headed westbound toward the scene. And once I was going or cutting across the yard, I saw what I thought was, I saw an officer on it would have been the west side of the driveway, maybe in the middle of the driveway. I'm not exactly sure. But I thought that was Officer Coy. I'm not exactly sure if it was or not. I thought there was another officer standing next to him or nearby. Again, wasn't sure. I remember asking something to the tune of what needs to be done or how can I help? I'm not exactly sure what I uttered at that point. And one of the two officers pointed towards Mr. Hill, who was laying in the driveway.
Okay.
At that point, about simultaneously, when I looked over in that general direction, Officer Barsadi stated something to the effect of, "We need to put cuffs on him." I went over, immediately started assisting, rolling Mr. Hill over. I'm not sure if it was Officer Barsadi or another officer that placed the cuffs on. And
But, sorry to interrupt, but those weren't your cuffs?
they were not.
Okay, sorry. Please continue.
Then we rolled Mr. Hill back over, and then from that point, there were several officers that started arriving on scene, and, or maybe were already there. I'm not exactly sure of when officers arrived. There were a couple that went into the garage and did a quick sweep of that. And I think even I think if you see on the body camera, I believe I took 1 or 2 steps in there and shined my flashlight around.
What were you looking for when you shined your flashlight around?
But we didn't know, at that point, I didn't know what was going on. And it can be heard in my body camera several times that I've asked during the incident what was going on, or what, does anyone have any idea what's, you know, what we're looking for?
Why is that important to you, or are you even asking that question?
Because the scene security, there could be other issues that cause harm to anyone that's there on the scene.
And so that's important for you to know, to help you do your job?
Yes.
And so at this point in time, you're on the scene, you have cuffed Mr. Hill, but you still don't know what's going on?
That's correct.
All right, and you're actively inquiring, asking people? Asking other officers, I'm sorry?
Not repeatedly, but I'd asked, the duration while I was on scene, I'd asked multiple times.
Okay. You stated that you took a couple of steps in the garage and looked for weapons and things of that sort?
Well, I said I believe I think that I stepped or went into the garage. There were a couple other officers that can be seen on the body camera, if I recall correctly, that were looking into the garage. Whether I just moved my flashlight in their direction or actually went in there, we would be looking for anything, whether it's weapons or people. Any kind of evidence that might help understand the situation.
All right. Are there like 3 objectives that you have, or that are in your mind when you arrive on a scene such as this?
Well, if you're referring to what we previously discussed, one of the things that after this incident, there was something that I put on our whiteboard in our
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. Excuse us a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Please approach. All right. You may be seated, everyone. Thank you. All right, if you could rephrase.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. So, Officer Bramford, when you were on the scene, did you have like 3 objectives that were important to you, such as securing the scene, rendering aid, and preservation of evidence?
There's actually more than that. When we spoke, I informed you of the 3 that I put up on our board to remind individuals, but there are actually, I believe, 9.
Okay, well, let's talk about the top 3, because those would be the most important, right?
Arguably.
Okay, so what would be the first thing?
Scene security.
Okay, and what would that entail?
That would entail, at that point, any officer on scene would typically keep their firearm out, still looking for any kind of threat that might be present, whether they're sweeping an area or searching an area, whatever the incident calls for.
Okay. What about the next one, rendering aid?
Rendering aid. What's the question, sir?
Talk about that and its importance.
Well, the importance, the importance of rendering aid is kind of self-explanatory. It's to render aid to individuals who might need it, but the rendering aid is not exactly what is spelled out in our directives.
Okay. And preservation of evidence?
Yes, that is farther on down the list, so that's not technically number 3. I don't know all 9 of them in exact order, but that would be farther on down the list. There's others that would be like witnesses. If you find any witnesses, separate witnesses, safeguard evidence, things of that nature.
Okay. So just to be clear, there's really a checklist and a flow chart of how these things are supposed to go.
There's a list listed in, actually it's in several different places in our directives or training circulars or even supervisor's manual. There are different lists and most of them do not mirror each other.
Okay. Moving on. So what did you do after you placed the cuffs or assisted in the cuffs being placed on Mr. Hill? What did you do then?
Well, as I said, there were a couple officers, and like I said, I can't recall if I stepped into the garage, but there were some of those that searched the garage, and then a majority of the other officers, or actually, from what I can recall, all the other officers from that area where I was in front of the garage went into either around the house or into the house. I'm not exactly sure because I was not with them. I stayed with Mr. Hill's where he was located and kept my flashlight on him.
Okay. And at some point, a sergeant came and told you to do chest compressions?
That's correct.
Okay, and you did that?
I did.
Did you have gloves on you at the time?
I believe I did.
And how long? So you did chest compressions until the medic arrived?
Once they arrived, they asked how long I was doing chest compressions. I believe I told them 1.5 to 2 minutes or something similar. And I believe they had someone else take my place before. I'm not sure if it was another medic or another officer that took my place.
Okay, and then the medics arrived on scene?
Well, the medics were the ones that asked that question. So I don't know when they said, they asked how long, because you don't want someone doing chest compressions for too long. You become fatigued. So they had, I don't know if it was another officer or another medic that was instructed to take over for me.
Okay, thank you. And you know Adam Coy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you see him in the courtroom? Stipulate ID?
Okay,
Thank you.
all right,
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
okay. Okay, ID is stipulated. Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Cross-examination,
May I proceed, Your Honor?
you may.
Good morning, Officer Bradford.
Good morning.
My name is Mark Collins, along with Caitlin Stevens. We represent Mr. Coy. Appreciate you being here today. I don't know if you look familiar. I don't know if we formally met, but we talked on the phone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And thank you for your service. Appreciate your service, military service. So the run you were initially on was a robbery in progress, right?
That's correct.
So when you're heading there, it turned out it wasn't a robbery, correct?
Yes,
And that happens a lot, doesn't it?
it does.
You're sent out on a run what you think something is, but it doesn't turn out to be that way, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you have to be ready for whatever you encounter at that scene.
That's correct.
And is it fair to say that, have you responded to shots fired scenes before?
Yes, sir.
And is it fair to say, and I know there's outliers, but it's usually pretty chaotic or usually not a lot, people, arriving officers tend to not know what's going on, correct?
That's correct.
And, hey, what's going on, that's not uncommon in where shots fired responses for officers getting there who weren't there originally, correct?
It's not uncommon. That's correct.
And then when you first got there and you came up, you handcuffed the person that was in the floor of the garage.
I assisted, yes.
And that's based on training because that person can still be a threat.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not something you do to be mean or anything like that, or it's what you initially did, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, for your 13 years as a police officer, is it fair to say you rely upon your reasonable suspicion analysis?
Oh, just to correct real quick, it's just 12 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
In your 12 years, you were trained and you have to rely on your process for when you believe you have reasonable articulable suspicion, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what that means to you.
For reasonable suspicion?
Yes.
Well, there are two different types of, two primary types of ways you determine what kind of incident or what authority you have as a law enforcement officer. There's reasonable suspicion and there's probable cause. Probable cause being the higher of the two that gives you authority to arrest an individual. It would be like hard evidence, something that is something that you can either concrete or evidence that shows that this person can be arrested. Reasonable suspicion, a little bit lower than that, is more what you would consider inclination. You have a sense, or you see things. For example, if I'm driving behind a car, it's easier to explain an example. If I'm driving in my cruiser and I see someone going over the speed limit and swerve out of their lane, I have reasonable suspicion that they could potentially be intoxicated. That could be one explanation. That gives that inclination that there's something going on. If I pull the individual over and do field sobriety tests, and then further they take a blood alcohol content, breathalyzer, and they are found to be over the limit, then I've got that hard evidence that leads me into probable cause for arrest. So.
Well done, appreciate it. So basically, it gives you a duty to investigate.
Yes, sir.
And you have to investigate, correct?
Yes.
And many times when you investigate your reasonable suspicion, it turns out that it was nothing at all.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes it leads you to investigate more.
That's correct.
Like in the OVI stop, you might ask them to do the field sobriety test. If they had an explanation, oh, hey, this is what happened, you may be like, okay, you're fine, right?
That's correct.
And then sometimes you actually solve a crime or help, then go to the probable cause.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And you'd use that every day that you're on the patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, you've participated in the shoot, don't shoot scenarios with firearms training, correct?
Yes, I have before.
That's a controlled environment, right?
It is.
Very well lit.
Yes.
And the object is to try to have people
Actually, there are different types of fire. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Very good. And actually, you're trying to train off, or you're trying to receive training that allows you to be more, comfortable is not the word, have more exposure to split-second decisions.
That's correct.
And you have to decide between an actual threat and a non-threat, right?
Yes, sir.
An actual threat could be one thing. There can also be a perceived threat, correct?
Yes, sir.
And both of those can be deadly, correct?
Yes.
And based on your training, if you perceive a deadly threat, you don't have to wait, do you?
No.
Action's faster than reaction, correct?
Action beats reaction.
You don't have to wait for someone to thrust the knife at you or pull the trigger.
Negative.
Okay. And if you reasonably, or if you perceive that, you're allowed to respond, and you're not trained to injure somebody, correct?
You're trained to stop the threat.
Okay. You're not trained to kill somebody, right?
Negative.
And so whatever, so in the course, if the sheet goes down or the machine turns sideways, that's when the threat is stopped.
That's correct.
And every situation could be different. Could be one bullet, could be unload the entire clip, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
My co-counsel said I've covered everything. Thank you, Officer Branford. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Branford. The state has no further questions. Officer Branford, my apologies.
Okay. Officer, you can step down.
Your Honor.
State may call their next witness.